To welcome you at ZANU PF headquarters, the home of the permanent Zimbabwe revolution. Today, our presser is focused on two main subjects. The first one is the aftermath of the fiasco of 31 March and the refocus of the president, Dr. Emerson Dambudzo Mnangagwa, comrade. And he's refocusing on what he has always done best since the advent of the Second Republic. And the kudos for the president have been much more to do with the economic recovery and sustained development of Zimbabwe so that we can move ever closer to the goal of the 2030 vision of Zimbabwe as an income middle status state. You will recall that 5 years ago, when he came into power, we had queues for fuel in Zimbabwe. You will recall that we also had a begging bowl to the various international development partners, particularly the West, for food. Each year there would be a drought, there would be a deficit. Zimbabwe would be placed among the beneficiaries of global food rescue, with United Nations agencies associated with avoiding famine playing an inordinate role in the feeding of our people. You will recall that when he came into power, we had a worthless currency. You will recall that when he came into power, the country had no hope. The young people of Zimbabwe had no hope. They had lost hope. And the revolution, which had been waged in the 1960s and 70s, was being viewed as a lost cause. In fact, some were saying the revolution that lost its head. Now we are 5 years down the line. The picture is of a Zimbabwe which is completely different. It's the difference between midnight in the rain season and afternoon in October when the sun is very bright. He has completely transformed this economy to give it a vibrance which is initially it was doubted by those who don't wish well for Zimbabwe. But I can say to you now that even the doubting Thomases have no longer any need to start griping about Zimbabwe's economy, because the success is all there to see, even for them. There's a saying that if you can't beat them, join them. And this is exactly what is now happening with those people who had consigned Zimbabwe to a country which is a failed state, which is there to be rescued under some international UN clause about the duty to protect, was being advocated because of abject state failure. That picture has completely changed. We are here where no matter the amount of cars which are being brought into the country, and there are many, we don't have a good public transport system. So Zimbabweans are driving cars. We are even having a situation where the roads are clogged. And sorry to say it, but the accident rate is very high because the capacity of the roads to accommodate the cars is being exceeded. But on the other hand, we cannot doubt that this arrival of a middle-class Zimbabwean society is a good thing. It shows that the economy of Zimbabwe is pumping on a self-sustaining role. There is a new middle class which has emerged in Zimbabwe. Every house is owned. Every car which you see on the road is owned. There's no hire purchase. There's no mortgage for this economic activity. And we have a vibrant SME economy which contributes 70%, up to 70% of the national GDP. The SME is a pulse of how an economy is performing. But we are also getting to a situation where even formal employment, 7 a.m. to 5 a.m., 5 days a week, is becoming the norm, because the towns which are emerging and the towns which are reviving are testament to the fact that the economy is on the mend. We now even have the IMF and the World Bank concurring to the bullish figures of the recovery of the Zimbabwean economy. These were institutions which had consigned Zimbabwe to the heap of failed states. So it's a pum-pum to the performance of our president and his focus on economic recovery and the quest for prosperity as the only way to fulfill the sacrifices of the generation of the 1960s and 70s. He is not losing sight of the ball. He is keeping his eyes on the side of his sight on the ball, understandably so, being one of the surviving pioneer recruits of the nascent Zimbabwean state, as we developed our own capacity, military capacity, to confront the enemy, to win, and eventually to defend Zimbabwe. He has traveled that journey in every aspect, our current president. So his institutional memory of what was aspired for by that generation is pregnant. It's full of the idealism which made so many young people sacrifice their life because they knew that if we fight for our country, we shall prosper. And he is living to fulfill that aspect of prosperity as a homage to the sacrifices of the 1960s and 70s, of which he was a participant, of which he continues to champion. I am saying this because there are all sorts of detractors who talk about fiction of the economy. They have no statistics to prove that the economy is not doing well, except ad hominem attacks on our president. When I say ad hominem, these are personalized attacks about the president. When you begin to say, I don't like somebody because he's fat, I don't like somebody because he has got he limps in his leg, the attacks against the president are coming from people who have personalized politics. They have nothing but a reckless, unfulfilled ambition for power, which in a democratic state they cannot satisfy because the voter is basically happy with what the president has done. And the events which build up to 31 March, where there was a lot of razzmatazz, where bogus spokespersons were thrust upon the social media stage. I'm glad Blessing is here, Blessed is here, where, you were given the impression that something big, ominous was about to happen to Zimbabwe. It came to naught. Why? Because the people of Zimbabwe are happy with what the president is doing. They are a very risk-averse population. They fought a war. They will not be stampeded into doing something which destroys the gains and the peace and the stability and the unity which is obtaining. So they gave short shrift to those who are aspiring that through chaos, through confusion, somehow power can be transferred to basically people who are hungry for power but have no other capability except hunger for power. The people of Zimbabwe shunted them aside, so there's a lot of humble pie being eaten by those people. And the president struts upon the economic stage, the political stage, the diplomatic stage of Zimbabwe with absolute confidence, with absolute health, with absolute assurance that he is on course, he is in communion with the Zimbabwe people. This is the reality of the economic situation. Our president's power within the party has never been so strong. Our president's grip on the state of affairs of Zimbabwe has never been so strong. So I want to assure you, as I speak to you, that the ghost of confusion, of despondence, which 31 March would have foisted upon the Zimbabwe people has been foisted aside by the reality of the Zimbabwe people that the president is doing a good job. We are saying this because the president has gone back, like I said, to focus on the economic development of Zimbabwe. And what has happened in the last couple of weeks bear testament to his interest to make sure that the Zimbabwe economy continues to pump on a certain, on a sustained scale. He recently visited Russia, our traditional all-weather friend, the country which helped to usher in the democratization of the gun and the ability of people of color other than European to fight for their independence in 1917 with the Bolshevik Revolution. The Chinese, the Vietnamese, the Koreans, the Cubans, the Algerians, and later on the Africans in Southern Africa. They all equalized the power of asymmetrical warfare with the West by mastering the gun, and with a diaspora of young people in Zimbabwe in the 1960s and 70s, going all over friendly countries in Eastern Europe, in the Caribbean, and in Africa, and in China, to train to master modern weapons. This is the story of our relationship with Russia, but now it's about economic cooperation, and Russia is a country which has been under sanctions, but has been able to prove that it can support its economy even during a war. We have very good relationships which we are forging now with Russia. You know that Zimbabwe is the 4th largest diamond producer in the world. The biggest company producing diamonds, mining diamonds in the world is Russian. It is in this country, and we expect that among the bevy of minerals which are making Zimbabwe a preferred destination of mining foreign direct investment, the diamond industry is going to even play a bigger role to join our gold industry of SMEs, which has produced so much gold and continues to produce more gold, so that the ZiG can eventually come to a situation where the ZiG is 1 and the US dollar is 2 in terms of exchange. So gone are the inflation years which have marked the earlier part of our history, but which was a hallmark of this First Republic. That's done. It will never, that era, we never come back, because our president is called Mr. Strong Zig. That's the name which I give him. His acronym is Mr. Strong Zig, and is determined to make sure that our currency continues to be sustained by a robust economy which is performing such that we have food security, but not only food security, we've gone beyond that now. We are now looking at exporting food, all various types of food to Zimbabwe. I'm from Zimbabwe. This means the rural folk with their business units, which have now been established as a modus operandi to uplift rural lives, can continue to thrive so that we banish poverty even at rural village level. This is what the president is doing. That's why the confidence of the Zimbabwe people in him continues to be sustained, and it continues to rise. So he is back to his mantra. Zimbabwe is back in business. We are open for business. From Russia, he went to Belarus. This is a country which broke the sanctions in the supply of agricultural equipment. You know that you cannot produce enough unless you've got modern technology. We were shunned from the traditional agricultural machinery countries, the Fiat Hollands, the John Deere's, the famous Max tractors, famous brand name in tractors. This could not be found in Zimbabwe. We had vintage ones which had been a carryover from the colonial or the post-colonial economy. But now, even when there is a huge wheat harvest, we can take it all to the granaries, because we forged a relationship with Belarus. Yes, it's not a first-tier country in terms of agricultural equipment, but it's better than not having that equipment. And it has proved to the people of Zimbabwe that it can deliver in terms of increasing production for the people of Zimbabwe and harvesting it. You saw the president recently opening state-of-the-art granaries in Kwekwe. This is a good thing is it Kwekwe, for the Midlands in Kwekwe. This is a mark of confidence in the way we are going with our agriculture, that not only are we food secure, but we are becoming a food exporter. We have signed contracts to supply 40,000 tons of citrus to China. This is a huge market, and it will not be long before you see the whole Limpopo Valley, and as well as the Mfure Valley in Chegutu area. If you are flying from the above, you will be seeing fields and fields of yellow oranges being produced by Zimbabwe, destined for those descending pallets of citrus fruits in the major markets of China and the Middle East. This is where we are now going with our president. The same thing is happening in the mining area, where he is attracting top players on the global stage to come into Zimbabwe beyond diamonds, which I mentioned. We have now lithium, but we are also looking at reviving other aspects of our mining, ferrochrome smelting. There is increasing investment, coking coal production, there is increasing production, and of course, the all famous now, the steel sector. This is our president showing that Zimbabwe can aspire to and manage a modern economy. And this has led to a loss of words by the detractors of the president. They cannot pinpoint anything against him except to have personalized attacks against him. Even that will soon die out, because nothing succeeds like success. So on the economic front, the president is proving his mettle that Zimbabwe will continue to be a preferred destination of business. We are now getting to a situation where new cities are going to be built in Zimbabwe. Dynamic industrial cities are going to be built in Zimbabwe. You know, the building of a city is the ultimate expression of development. The changeover from Cecil John Rhodes and the colonial era to a modern Zimbabwe nation through the colonial Rhodesia was when cities like Salisbury, like Gweru, were established by the capitalists who were racists from that particular era. The president is now taking it to a higher level where the majority of the people in Zimbabwe in charge of their country can start building cities, which will show a new vibrance about the Zimbabwe economy. I want to just prep your ears that the next couple of months we'll see big announcements about the establishment of new towns in Zimbabwe. And these towns are premised upon what we are producing in the mining sector, the beneficiation which is going on in that mining sector, which then requires a steady labor force. We will see Bulawayo come back as a major fabricator of steel, downstream fabricator, because we now have the steel. We will see the emergence of Manize town very, very soon as the fastest growing town in Africa, because no steel blast furnace survives and sustains without its own labor force. I warn you, I alert you, when the president announces the statutory instrument about Manize city, all of you must aspire to come in heaven, to go in heaven as you stand there, to have your house there. Because the amount of steel which is being produced and the iron ore which is there will ensure you that even when you come back at the resurrection, there will still be a name, a title deed to your house 300, 400 years from now. This is what the president is doing, and this is kick-starting a lot of activity on the infrastructure side. The railways will now have a balance sheet, because you cannot support production of steel moving coking coal from Wange by road. You see the destruction, the plowing of the road to Victoria Falls, because we are using trucks 30-ton trucks to transport coal. The roads cannot sustain that. Now we have a new addition of 30-ton trucks plying our road from Mvuma all the way to the new road, all the way to Byte Bridge. Because each week, about 300 trucks leave Mvuma, Manize, Chivu Manize, to go to South Africa, to supply steel to South Africa. And even the South African steel industry now accepts that ours is a superior one to theirs. So we are now in a collusive relationship, a cooperating relationship with our South African counterparts, so that we can develop the two steel industries together. Again, I alert you to the prospect that Zimbabwe and South Africa, together with Mozambique, may actually form a steel union, the same way France and Germany did in the 1950s. This is where Zimbabwe is going. This is where new growth cities are going to come from. This is a good picture about where we are going, and an indication of that is the return of our diaspora from the 70s, from the 80s when white people ran away from independence, 70s they ran away from the war. Now there was another diaspora of black people in the 2000 when the economy collapsed. All of them are beginning to have a big confidence in the Zimbabwe economy. That's why there is frenetic building activity. Never has the country consumed so much cement. Now, just as a mark of that confidence in the recovery of our construction sector, in Magunje, in my home province of Mashonaland West, $1 billion cement plant is cropping up to supply cement to Zimbabwe. When a company plows $1 billion in a country, they've assessed the risk. They've looked at where that country is going. They will not do it redambi. They see where this country is going. Already we have $1 billion in lithium being invested. Now we have $1 billion in steel being invested. Now when you combine steel and cement, you can see how countries develop. This is where we are going as a country. I am saying that there is absolutely no credence whatsoever to the despondent message which coming from detractors who have nothing to offer but personalized attacks, even invention of non-existent maladies being ascribed to our very alert president, who is very much in charge of the economy. People should swallow the folly of their misplaced belief that something could happen to the president because the people of Zimbabwe are not happy with him. No, they refused to come out on 31 March because they are happy with the president. They are happy with the way ZANU PF is doing its job. So this is the message which we want communicated to all and sundry, that Zimbabwe is on the right path. I also want to highlight another aspect of the detractors which we have to debunk. A couple of weeks ago, our president spoke about our relationship with South Africa and expressed the hope that South Africa and the United States can find themselves. At the core of the misunderstanding between Washington and Pretoria was the issue of the Afrikaners as African people. Our president gave me an instruction to make it very clear that we as ZANU PF would want to see the ANC colleagues in South Africa come to an accommodation with their Afrikaner citizens, because they are being called Afrikaner. They are whites who came to South Africa and rooted themselves within the political milieu of South Africa. Yes, along the way there may have been some misunderstandings, some of them, of course, fatal, but at the end of the day, even when brethren or sisters fall out, the best is when they find each other again. And I can say that this is the message from the non-racial liberation struggle which we waged. We could not go to the world and get support from Russia, from China, if we had said we were fighting against white people, because they are white. We would have been bundled on the next plane back to Zimbabwe I mean, back to Africa by the Russians, by the Bulgarians, and by anybody else who supported us. So the ethos of the National Liberation Movement is non-racial. And our president went back to those ethos when he called upon our friends in South Africa as fellow citizens to accommodate each other. And when he did that, he also said, when America announced tariffs, we want zero tariffs with America. I want to explain to you that we don't have much trade with America because of sanctions. But we are becoming very proficient in certain industries like steel, where we may even have better companies than some of the competing American companies. So if you produce with a competitive advantage in a certain product in world economics, it makes sense for you to say, I don't want tariffs because you know you can perform better. In both instances about the Afrikaner and the tariffs by America, there was an attack on our president. He is pandering to America. He has become a sellout. He is not fulfilling the legacy of Pan-African nationalists. 6-7 weeks later, what happens? President Cyril Ramaphosa is in Washington. Who is his host last week? None other than President Trump. Clearly showing that stricture by our president, that persuasion by our president, that South Africa and America should find each other, he has found home in diplomacy. So where are the words of those who were attacking our president for being a sellout when President Cyril Ramaphosa himself is being hosted by President Trump? And behold, Zelensky went to Washington and you saw it, the media fiasco which went on between Trump and Zelensky of Ukraine. With President Cyril Ramaphosa, it was different. Why was it different? Because our Afrikaner businessmen and former golfers who have made America their home went on to say, we are Africans. We will take our president to the White House to talk with Trump. I mean, what is better than seeing Johannes Rupert, the richest man on the African continent, the one who fills all the duty-free shops with designer labels, coming to chaperone his own president, Cyril Ramaphosa, to President Trump, and to hear him, Johannes, saying, those who are saying the blacks have failed to rule South Africa properly and are accusing them of crime, let them look into their own eyes where they've got logs which are bigger than twigs. And he cited the Western Cape pro-white administration and the crime rate in the suburbs of Cape Town, in the African suburbs of Cape Town. He said nothing like that exists in the generality of the South African economy where the ANC is ruling. So he said the crime rate in a white-ruled outpost of South Africa is worse. Here was a man, Afrikaner, defending President Cyril, telling Trump that his original charges of genocide against the whites in South Africa is not true. And those who were supposed to become the beneficiaries of Trump's attack were the ones who were chaperoning our president to say, this is our president, Cyril Ramaphosa. I mean, pictures speak 1,000 words. So here again is a poser. Where are you, Kasukwere? You were trying to say Mnangagwa is a sellout. Where are you, Malema? Where are you, Sophie Mokena? You saw those broadcasts which were coming from the South African Broadcasting Corporation, penning Zimbabwe left, right, and center. They have been debunked by the fact that the multiracial respecting of minorities by the president has gone down well with him as SADC chairman, that our South African friends are showing to the world that we can build multiracial societies in Southern Africa. This is a good thing. It's a vindication of where our president has gone. And for this country, I've mentioned it before, the Afrikaners have always played a role, a positive role, historically, if we remove the war years of apartheid, they were the farmers in Chipinge area in the colonial period. They only went back after the World War to South Africa because the British colonialists were not so accommodating. But they came back again after the Second World War when British soldiers were decommissioned and their officers were sent to Zimbabwe to grow commercial crops, but they didn't know how to grow crops in Africa, and they imported Afrikaner farmers to Zimbabwe as foremen. So there have been people who have been in this land. Even the company of Johan Rupert started in Mutare. I've mentioned it before. This big company started in Mutare when they were the only Afrikaner family which was allowed to trade the good quality Zimbabwean tobacco. And they became the tobacco giant, which has made them become the white goods giant of the world. So we have a history in the region of accommodating each other with the Afrikaners. There have been missteps along the way, but everybody makes missteps. But what matters is finding each other at the end of the day. So, pam to the foresight of our president, for which he was paid by the same quarters who go and call for sanctions in America against Zimbabwe. Now, the biggest disappointment again for them is last week, President Trump announcing his Africa policy. What does he say? With the closure of USAID, the era of America promoting aid as an instrument of African policy is over. He said it. He said the only thing which can deliver prosperity to Africa is trade and investment. That's what President Trump says. This is what President Mnangagwa has always said. Yes, we negotiate with the IMF and the World Bank about debt arrears. That's what the Minister of Finance spend most of their time doing, so that we can remove the overhang of historical debt. But beyond that, President is not sitting on his laurels waiting for the manner of debt forgiveness. No. He has gone further and started attracting investment into Zimbabwe. I give you world financial figures. The whole IMF and World Bank system put together in terms of funds for investment, it can only muster $9 trillion US for the whole world. That is the capability of the World Bank, the IMF, and associated institutions. The ADB, the Asia Development Bank, the EU, European Investment Bank, all those can only muster from the public finances of the world, from the government finances or government-supported finance. They can only muster, MUSTER, $9 trillion US. But if you go to the international private sector, where the sovereign wealth funds are administered, where the billionaires put their money on the market through the stock exchange, in Wall Street, in the Tokyo Stock Exchange, in the Dubai Stock Exchange, in the Milan Stock Exchange, in Frankfurt Stock Exchange, Seoul, Riyadh, London, Paris. These are the places where most of the money is. That sector of the international funds accounts for $90 trillion US. That's almost 10 times bigger than what you can get from the World Bank and the IMF. So the president focuses on where most of the money is. That's why he says Zimbabwe is open for business. And the rewards are there. I'll give a classic case. South Africa has got a steel industry from the 1950s. It was founded on state funds. It has been administered mainly on state funds, through pension funds supplying money to that steel sector. As a result, the performance of public monies which are being put into that steel sector lags behind the productivity of South Africa's steel sector. Today, the government of South Africa has woken up to the reality that their steel industry cannot be sustained on the basis of the taxpayers' money of South Africa. On the other hand, President Mnangagwa took a different route. He decided to look for risk finance from intrepid financiers and investors in the steel sector. We have built a thoroughly modern steel sector. the best one in Europe and America. There's nothing like what we have, even in Europe, I repeat. And in Africa, the only other countries are Egypt and Morocco, besides South Africa and Zimbabwe. But ours was built completely on risk money. Somebody put his money and said, I vote for Mnangagwa, I vote for Zimbabwe, I vote for the people of Zimbabwe, I vote for the resources of Zimbabwe with my own capital. Because if I put it there, my capital will be turned to profit. As a result, as I speak to now, our steel sector is about to announce that it has acquired ISO 90,000 status. You will be seeing it. This is a badge, an imprimatur of the fact that Zimbabwe steel is second to none in terms of quality on the global market. But more important, in terms of pricing, we are beating the Chinese, who are normally the best and most efficient producers of steel. On a price per ton, we are way more, much cheaper, more affordable than even steel from China. What does it mean? It means the Southern African market, the South African market, is now ours. And if we agree between Pretoria, Tshwane, and Harare on a tariff-free arrangement, because we are cooperating under the auspices of SADC's industrialization, it means we integrate our two industries where South Africa's fabrication sector downstream is more advanced than ours. But ours is better at the raw material sector, production of steel billets and other aspects of iron rolled steel. We dovetail the two. We will make the most efficient steel industry on the global stage. It means that Zimbabwe and South Africa, through logistics in Mozambique, we can offer steel at much better price than anybody else in the world. The only challenge we now have is the logistics of moving that steel to the global markets. But because there is a balance sheet of a steel producer in Zimbabwe and the quality is good, investors are going to stampede into Zimbabwe and South Africa and Mozambique to build the necessary railways, to build the necessary thermal power stations, to build the necessary hydroelectric power stations, to build the gas stations if we can use gas from Cabo Delgado, to build airports, to build cities, because there is a proven product which everybody wants, which is steel. Steel and cement are what food is in human beings. They are steel and cement to national economies of every country. So we have staked out a place in the global steel market which is unbeatable. This is good. It means that our drive for development, for achieving prosperity, is much more assured, because every country's development index is measured by how much kilogram of steel per capita, per individual, that country consumes. So we are going to go up the ladder very rapidly. It means a lot of jobs for young people. This is what it means. It means an ever-growing middle class for Zimbabwe. This is what it means. So this is where we are going now, to debunk all those who have tried to pan our president for being a visionary. They are ostriches with their heads in the sand, all of them. We have been trying to criticize our president with a nostalgia for the Rhodesian economy. When we say, Zimbabwe yakamengi yakadai, Zimbabwe Rhodesia yakanga yakadai. Even the advocates in the opposition parties that we go back to the colonial era because we were better, they are having their illusions shattered by what the president is able to do on the global stage. We are becoming a performer on the global stage. Hapana zvezvo kunzi Zimbabwe it's an appropriate technology for Africa country. No. Our president has gone for the big prize. We are not doing things which says this is appropriate for Africa. No, that's why we are so happy when President Trump says from now henceforth America is going to offer trade and investment to Africa. He knows that the way Africa is going, the way Africa is carving relationships with other emergent economies, if America does not join, it is the one which remains on the margin. So he is saying, let me become part of the bonanza which is coming out of a vibrant Africa with a young population of 1.4 billion when all the other countries' populations are aging. This is a continent of the future. And the president is time and again telling to youth in Zimbabwe that your future is bright with ZANU PF. And we are very happy that there is a resonant aspect to the message of the president from our young people, young girls, girl child, young boys, boy child. They see Zimbabwe as a country which offers hope, which offers the prospect that it will be the most prosperous country in Africa, because the president is hitting all the right chords in terms of what should be done to make a country modern and prosperous. So this is basically what we want to say, that on two aspects, let the president let Zimbabweans forget about 31 March. On second aspect, let the message of the president that we are happy with our minorities, including even the Afrikaners, because you heard him when he was in Chiredzi 3 days ago. Why did he choose the Chiredzi on the cultural day? Because there is a minority population of Zimbabwe, the Shangaan, the Zulus who are there, and the vendors. He went there to advertise the diversity of the Zimbabwean population. But more than that, to say that notwithstanding our diversity, we are going to work together as Zimbabweans, because our diversity gives us strength rather than becomes the recipe of divisions. So he is assuring the minorities in Zimbabwe. He started with solving the Ndebele question from the hangover of the Gukurahundi era. So he is now taking it further to other minorities in Zimbabwe, where all the official languages are now being kept as treasures of the national culture of Zimbabwe. This is the president, and this message is what is resonating even with Jewish populations in Southern Africa. A lot of some of the merchants who are coming back to Zimbabwe, they were of Jewish origin. We are selling to the world that Zimbabwe is the most racially tolerant, minority tolerant country, religious tolerant country in the world. Because out of that, even when Indians came here, they became part of our milieu. With that breached, when Malawians were here in colonial era, they were foreigners. At independence, we all made them citizens. Mozambicans, we made them citizens. That's why when elections in Mozambique come, those in Zimbabwe can vote. They are Zimbabweans. We are a country which has matured to us to respect diversity in all its aspects. And this is the person who has carried that message furthest and farthest is our president. That's why his prestige on the African continent continues to rise. But not on the African continent. You will be surprised how many invitations is now getting even from Western powers to visit them. Those who were thinking that our president will continue with the tradition, the badge of Zimbabwe as a pariah state, they have been dumbfounded. He is a much admired statesman on the global stage. And we feel proud about it, because this has been done in a very short 5 years. So those who want to foist divisive short-term agendas against ZANU PF, against our president, please admit your failure. Don't try to continue to spoil the good atmosphere in the country by talking of succession issues ad infinitum. Let the man do the job which he has been elected to first. Until his term is over, then there will be again a declaration of a race to succeed him. At that stage, everybody can go and wear his campaign shirt, and put on his campaign scarf and start competing to say, I want to go to the race. That time is coming. It cannot be fast forwarded simply because there are those people who have a desire for power and who attack president with infantile ideas of being left-wing. They want to be infantile communist radicalism of African, which has no production at all. Hey, Mnangagwa has done this. Hey, Mnangagwa is sold out to the whites. Hey, Mnangagwa is... That is not what the people of Zimbabwe are seeing in our president. They are seeing a pragmatic statesman who is focused on making sure that there's prosperity for Zimbabwe. And in the process of delivering prosperity, we pay homage to the tomb of the unknown soldier and the unknown civilian which lies at Heroes Acre, because that sacrifice from that era could only have been premised upon my life being the price of a successful country. If there was no hope of success, why would I sacrifice my life? We must remember that. They paid the price because they wanted a successful Zimbabwe. And the president is walking on the narrow path, on the straight path of making sure that Zimbabwe becomes a prosperous country. And the vibrance of this economy now, which is now emerging with so many indices of performance, even in industries where Africa has never excelled. I mentioned steel in particular. As I talk now, England is struggling to to maintain a steel plant. We have one which is vibrant. This is an indication of how far the president has carried this country. He has taken the resources of this country, which are world-class. He has invited world-class capital and technology and management to apply itself to that resource. And that money, that capital, that technology, and that management expertise is being exploited by the most capable African labor force, the most organized, the most educated on the African continent. This is a recipe for success which cannot fail. And on top of it, there is a stable, resilient political economic social structure in Zimbabwe. An economy which has been shaken, stress tests they call them in banks, so consistently by sanctions for 2 decades and survives, shows that the people of Zimbabwe are steadfast, they are organized, and they know where they are going. That's why we could survive that onslaught. But the beauty now is that the major country which was supportive of the destabilization of Africa, which is America, has said no more of that. We want to work with Africa. President Trump is talking of a summit of African heads of states. And we are very happy about it. But even happier when the best crop of African businessmen who have been Afrikaners, who are the ones on the global stage, when they are the ones who are chaperoning President Ramaphosa to show America that in Southern Africa we are building multiracial societies which cater for everybody, notwithstanding your minority status. This is a good thing. And we like America to be part of our development, of our success, the way China has shown that Africa, if you invest in Africa, it's a good business. That's what China has shown. The way India has shown that if you invest in Africa, it's a good business. Can you imagine, do you imagine what Southampton was before Varun? Now look at the whole area there, gleaming with new factories from just one single company. It has changed the world. This is what the president has done, demonstrating to world-class business people that in Zimbabwe you can come and make money and make the country prosperous. Varun Zimbabwe now owns Pepsi South Africa. Can you imagine? This is a company which had spent years trying to come into Zimbabwe. When President Mnangagwa came 4 or 5 years ago, he gave it the green light. And we'll look at what Varun has done to the people of Zimbabwe. It has shown that the traditional companies associated with this economy are not as creative as newcomers who have fresh ideas about where the country is going. So President is attracting fresh and competent capital to this economy. This is a man who will fulfill his dreams, and let's not throw cobwebs into his eyes. Let's not try to throw nails along the path which he is traveling, sharp nails along the path. Let's give him a chance so that he can do his best to make Zimbabwe be a prosperous country. So I hope that after 31 March, those who have tried to think Zimbabwe will sink to the abyss can now revisit their wrong visions, their wrong dreams, their wrong fantasies about where Zimbabwe is going. I thank you.